So May is actually Mental Health Awareness Month, and it's so important that we have a conversation on mental illness because honestly, so many of you guys are struggling with it. And to be honest, I have too in the past. And so I'm so excited to talk about this, but I just want to give you some statistics just so you know as you're listening. If you're struggling, you are not alone. These are sad statistics, but at the same time, I think it's good to just be aware that in any given year, 1 in 5 Americans will be diagnosed with a mental illness. So 44 million people on any year can be diagnosed with a mental illness. There's more than 200 classified forms of mental illness, which I thought was really fascinating because I, off the top of my head, only think of a couple, but there's so many different ways that people are struggling. Anxiety disorder is the most common, with 42 million people struggling with anxiety disorder. 22.5 million people struggling with major depression and 4.8 million youth struggling with depression. Obviously, suicidal thoughts and even actions are so high right now as well. And so that's why we're having this conversation. I just want to say first and foremost, too, if you are someone who is struggling with suicidal thoughts, please get the help you need. If you need a number to call, you can call 988, and that actually is available 24/7 for free support to help you get through these hard and dark times. Please do not walk this alone, friend. If you need help, get help. And if you're not ready to talk to a friend or a loved one, then call 988 and get the help that you need. I also just want to provide you guys with some scriptures as well. Some of you are kind of maybe facing some anxiety, some depression, just waves of it. We had some DMs come in, and we didn't get to discuss this on the podcast because there's so many DMs, but a lot of them on how does God help people through mental illness? How does God play a part in this? And I just think God is a huge part in this one because God created the mind. God created you, friend. He knows what you're walking through, and the Psalms give us a beautiful example of people really walking out those mental battles with the Lord, and that the Lord cares for you, that He's with you. There's a couple verses that you can turn to, but one verse I want to read before we kind of dive into this podcast is John 14:27, and it says, "Peace I leave with you, my peace I give to you. Not as the world gives, do I give to you. Let your hearts not be troubled, neither let them be afraid." And, I think sometimes we just hear verses like, "Oh yeah, let your heart not be troubled or afraid," and we think that this is like a command, like we just have to obey the command. We just have to not be afraid if we're a Christian. But that's not what God's saying. That's not what Christ is saying. He's saying, you don't need to be afraid. You don't have to be troubled because I am going to be with you. Receive my peace. Later on in the Bible in 1 Timothy, it says that God hasn't given us a spirit of fear, but one of power, love, and a sound mind. Again, that's not saying you need to have power. You need to muster up love. You need to have this sound mind. And God's saying, I'm giving you this. I've given you power. I've given you love. I've given you a sound mind. And so where I think God comes in is He is the anchor of our mental health. We have to receive His peace. We get to receive His joy. That's what it says. The joy of the Lord is our strength. Not the joy that you find in the world, not the joy that you find in the temporary things, the joy of the Lord. And so, whenever we come to know Christ, whenever we are baptized into Christ, the old stuff is gone, the new comes alive, and then we get to identify as Christ. We get to identify with Him. And so we get to receive His peace. We get to receive His joy. We get to receive being a daughter or a son of God, that spirit of adoption. And so probably a lot of what I just said, you might want to break down with a pastor and a friend. But I just had to say that here at the beginning, that God is like anchor point of mental health. If you need help, go to God, the one that created the mind, and receive His peace, receive His joy, receive His love. There's so many great verses that you guys can dive into. There's so many great things, but overall, I just wanted you to catch that. Again, another verse, if you're going through depression, like I mentioned, the psalmist, Psalms 42, David actually says, "Why are you so downcast, O my soul? Why are you so troubled?" And he says, "I put my hope in God, for you are my Savior, you are my God." And again, he's just putting it on God. God, give me your peace. God, help my soul to be at peace. You are my Savior, you are my God. Would my mind be fixated on that? A question that someone sent in is, why do people not talk about mental health in the church? And I think that people are starting, but I think one reason why people like Christians are struggling to admit it is because they think that it's a lack of faith on their part, or maybe that it's embarrassing or it's weakness. But friend, it is never weakness to confess. It's never weakness to share or to open up to someone about it. And that's a lot of what me and this guest are doing today. We're just talking as friends and hopefully giving you some advice to help you get out of the mental fog or the place that you're in your life. So if you need help, get help. Don't stay in hiding. Don't stay in the dark. Definitely get a friend. And I hope that this podcast is a great resource and a help to you along your journey. What's up, everybody? Happy Wednesday. I hope you're having a great week. But friends, it's about to get so much better because I have mentioned this already, but it is Mental Health Month. And I am so excited to invite the one and only Girl Tay Lautner to the Whoa, That's Good podcast. I should say back to the Whoa, That's Good podcast because you've already been here, but welcome back.
Thanks for having me again. It's so fun. I'm so excited to get to talk to you. I love that we get to do this.
It's so fun. You guys are crushing the podcast world right now, and it's just been so cool. I know I said this before we started recording, but I'm going to say it again because if you guys aren't listening to Lemons and all the things that the squeeze, I said lemons. If you guys aren't listening to the squeeze, then you got to be because it's so good. You guys have had such incredible interviews, and y'all are so much fun. So it's a joy to have you back on now, and y'all are like full-on podcasters.
Oh, my gosh. I mean, likewise, yeah. I feel like I still don't really know what I'm doing half the time. I'm just like showing up and talking to people. But I guess that's what it is. So
what it is.
It's clearly working. So I'm just gonna keep doing that.
It's definitely working, and that's what people want. That's the beauty of podcasting is that it really just is that. It's having conversations with people. And, I mean, for the longest time, you know, people ask me, like if I meet someone in an airport and they don't know who I am, and they're like, oh, what do you do? And I never knew what to say to that question. And then I finally just started saying, oh, I have a podcast. And at first it sounded funny because it seems like crazy that this could be my job, that I just get to have such awesome conversations with people. But yes, it's working and it's effective and it impacts people because I think we're so used to having these like fast little things that you see on TikTok or that you see on Instagram, and it's fun and it serves its purpose. But to get to like lean in on other people's intentional conversations is such a gift. I think it makes everybody better. So I love that y'all are doing that.
Yeah, thanks. It's so funny you say that because whenever we have done like press for the podcast before, you know, those like interviews are like 2 minutes max. Like they're so quick. And so like we'll do that and then we're done. And I'm like, wait, we didn't even say anything because I'm so used to, you know, sitting down and talking for like an hour. So it's really funny, like the difference between that. Now I've never like thought about that before, but now that I do like have these long conversations with people, when I do something different that is like even 5-10 minutes, it's over. And I'm like, oh, whoa, that was quick.
No, it's so true. Yeah, and even like with Instagram, I feel like I used to be so much better. I've circled the runway, I guess. I've come back around and I've gotten better at it again. But back in the day, like I would post good captions and like be really engaged on Instagram. And then when I started podcasting, I feel like I kind of left that because I was like so into the conversations I was having. And I was like, oh, well, if you want to know about that conversation, then go listen on the podcast, you know. And now I kind of have a balance where I'm like, okay, let me take the conversations I'm having and try to condense them in a way that it's meaningful on this fast-paced app, you know, because I think there's a way for it all. But yeah, podcasting is my favorite platform by far. I just love it. I love other people's podcasts. I love doing my own. It's just awesome. So anyways, today what we're going to do is kind of merge the two as well, because we are going to be reading our DMs that people have sent in, and we have so many DMs on mental health. So if we really were going to read all of them, this would be like an entire year series. So we have only chosen the top like 8 or 9 questions that I feel like are really important and I think will really touch people, and especially just with your story. But first, in typical Whoa, That's Good fashion, I'll ask you the question with a twist, and that is, Tay, what's the best piece of mental health advice you feel like you've been given over the years?
This question, I like debated for a good 20 minutes because I feel like, especially just over this past year and a half since having the podcast, I have learned so many great little like nuggets of wisdom. But I think something that has really stuck out to me. I honestly think my husband said it first. That's where I heard it was, it's really good to like feel your emotions. Like, if you're going through a hard time, like be sad, cry it out, feel those emotions. But it's important that we don't get stuck and we don't live in those, and that we don't let those define us. So, people are always like, it can get easy to get stuck there, but you don't want to deprive yourself of having a mourning period or having, that time that, you need to feel the sadness if you lost someone or if you're going through a grieving period. But it's important to not let that define you and continue to move forward and grow from that.
Summer is packed with so many fun things, and who wants to spend hours in the kitchen meal prepping or cooking, especially if you have kids? I don't know about you, but wow, that is just sometimes a lot. This summer, you can meet your wellness goals and enjoy every spare minute doing the things you love with Factor's no prep, no mess meals. With chef-crafted options like Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, and Keto, Factor can help fuel your body so that you feel your best. Factor's fresh, never frozen meals are approved by dietitians and ready to eat in just 2 minutes. They offer 35 different meals and over 60 add-ons to choose from every week, so there's always a new favorite just around the corner. From breakfast to snacks and even desserts, there's no shortage of options. And Factor's restaurant-quality meals with premium ingredients like filet mignon, blackened salmon will not disappoint. Factor helps me keep kitchen time to a minimum so that I have more time doing the things that I love. So honestly, guys, we love Factor. We have been using it for months now. I'll show you on my phone. I'm signed in. It just tells me the meal that I just got. We just got all these meals in. We were super excited about the chicken Alfredo because that is Honey and Haven's favorite meal at the moment. And we love it too, don't get me wrong. But there's so many delicious meals to choose from. We've been so impressed with how good the steak is. Like, the quality of the steak is absolutely amazing. We also do the add-ons. So we do smoothies, we do protein shakes, we do juices, like all kinds of really great stuff. And so you can really get it all at Factor. That is pretty much the go-to in the Huff House. Head to factormeals.com/woe50 and use the code WOE50 to get 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next month. That's the code WOE50 at factormeals.com/WOE50 to get 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next month while your subscription is active. That's so good. I love that. And I actually think sometimes it's like when you withhold the tears, it's when you do get stuck, because a lot of times it's like when you withhold and you hold it in, like there's only so long that really can live there before it finally just like explodes, Yeah. And I used to be a person where I would just like hold on to things, wait to cry, wait to get upset. And then when it did come out, it was like the end of the world, And so I do think when you're able to just be in touch with your emotions and with your feelings and get it out and share it with a friend, like as you go, instead of getting to the point where it's like you literally can't hold it back and it explodes, man, it's so much better. And I think like to that point, one thing when I talk about mental illness that I want to be cautious of is not getting stuck with like a diagnosis, like not letting a diagnosis define you and who you are. Because I had a moment one time that was so powerful to me, and this is not necessarily like a mental illness or anything, but I have struggled with dyslexia, and it was really interesting because one day I was prepping for Passion Conference and we were talking about having the teleprompter, and I said, oh, can you send me all the notes ahead of time? I was talking to production. Can you send me all the notes ahead of time because I'm dyslexic and I'm worried about reading it in real time. And Jen Johnson was right there in that room, and she's an awesome worship leader, and she said, oh, no. She was like, no, we do not say I am. She's like, you do not say I am dyslexic. That is not who you are. That might be something that you struggle with, but that is not who you are. So you're going to rephrase that. And I loved it so much that she said it. It kind of caught me off guard at first, like, wait, what? Like, I didn't even realize I said I am, but she said there is so much power in saying I am. I mean, literally in Exodus, one of the most powerful moments of scripture is when Moses, asked God, who should I say that you are when they ask me to God? And God says, I am who I am. Like the I am is who I am. I am all things. I am God. And then Jesus ends up saying, I'm the resurrection of life. I'm the bread of life. I am. So I am is a powerful statement. And when you come into agreement with I am this, you're putting that as a part of your identity and as a part of who you are. where the Bible says, like, you haven't been given the spirit of fear, but one of a sound mind. And I just love that it says that. Then it goes on to say, you've given a spirit of one that can cry out, Abba, Father. So who you are is a child of God. Who you are is Taylor. It's Sadie. It's who you are. And so as we talk about mental illness, and we're about to, you might be someone who has gotten a diagnosis of anxiety, of depression, of whatever it is that your mental illness. And I understand there's over 200 different mental illnesses out there. So there's a lot that you could be identifying with, just not to make that your full identity. You are so much more than that. And I don't believe that you have to stay stuck in that. I believe that there are things that you can do to get the help you need to come out of the cycle that you're in, or the space that you're in. And so we're going to talk about just some of the things that we've been through. Neither one of us, I don't think, would claim to be an expert. I certainly will not.
Nope.
I know Tay has a lot of things going in this world, but we're just two sisters and friends who are trying to, help you out along the way, just from things that we've personally experienced and through the questions that you guys have asked. But before we dive in fully to the questions, Tay, can you tell a little bit about what got you so passionate about talking about mental health and your foundation and everything?
Yeah. So I guess my love for mental health started when I was young. I had a lot of members in my family struggle with addiction. Whether that be from like smoking all the way to heroin. There was a wide range, and I watched a lot of members of my family kind of struggle with that. My cousin in particular, he's my closest. I'm an only child, so he's like my closest family. He was like a brother to me in age, and we would hang out all the time when I was a kid. And he overdosed on heroin, was in the ICU, had all of these things. And I remember leaving the ICU, and it's the first time. I don't really know why my parents brought me. I do question that, because I was 8 or 9 years old, and he was fully intubated, had everything. It scared the crap out of me, because I've never touched drugs. So I think maybe that was their goal. But I remember getting home, and I was like, why did he let that happen? How did he get to that point? As a young kid trying to understand what addiction was, you can't really explain that to that young of a kid. But I watched my family struggle with that for years. And then fast forward, my best guy friend in high school, he ended up getting diagnosed with bipolar and took his life during a manic episode. When we were in college, and that kind of rocked me, because I had no clue that he was struggling. It was a new thing that he was struggling with, and that kind of really lit a fire in me to talk about it more. And then fast forward to COVID, I'm a registered nurse. I worked as a COVID nurse, and then that obviously left me with some mental health struggles, because that was a little bit of a rough time.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, I ended up having to leave the hospital because of my mental health. I could not go back. But once I left, I was like, I have a little bit of a following on social media. I want to try to use my platform to give back and share what I'm going through, because so many people are struggling right now, not just our healthcare workers, but everyone. Even if you're just sitting at home, everyone is struggling. So I started this little blog called Lemons by Tay, and that kind of morphed into a nonprofit, which is a mental health nonprofit called the Lemons Foundation, where we're really focused on accessible and digestible mental health resources, because trying to figure out, if you Google how to better my mental health, that's really overwhelming. So we really work on giving people easy steps. And then after that came the podcast, The Squeeze, and that is a mental health-based podcast that Taylor, my husband, and I do together, and we've been doing that for a year and a half, and it's just been the most fun, rewarding. We call it free therapy. It's been amazing.
That's awesome.
That's my mental health little overview.
I love it. Well, I think that is so true when you Google something like that, like how to help with my mental health, and you kind of think like, oh man, the first thing's going to be so helpful, but then you're just like drowning in the 1 million different things that people are saying, and then, things are clickbaity and advertising, and you don't know if it's like really good for you, or if it's just, making $1. And I mean, even for me this past week, I was like, man, I just want to do like a full body, like I want to feel better, like what kind of food plan should I be on to feel better? So I literally Googled like food plan for full body feeling better. And I was like, oh my gosh, like there was thousands of different options. And then I ended up not doing anything because I was like, don't know which one's good. And so anyways, to say what a great thing to have a resource and a place to go where you're like, okay, this is just a girl and a team of people who get it and are actually trying to like help. And then what an awesome thing to then start a podcast to dive into deeper conversations. Like, I just love it. And I love that, you have personally experienced this in your life through different people and in your own way, but are willing to like open up the conversation to people who have experienced mental health in so many different aspects. And that's what I love about you guys' podcast. It's so awesome. So, okay, let's get to the questions that people sent in. We'll go simple first. I think this is just a really great question, and kind of like what we just talked about, like how to help in the day-to-day. So someone just simply said, what are some day-to-day coping mechanisms that you guys do for mental illness?
I think coping for me is, if sometimes I'll wake up and I'll be like, ooh, like I woke up like not on the wrong side of the bed, but on the wrong side of the bed of like my depression's like kind of showing a little bit today. My anxiety is feeling it. And what I've kind of learned to do is, I'll go and I'll tell Taylor, hey, I'm having one of those days I think I'm going to like work from bed today. He's like, great. Do you need anything? I'm like, no, I'm okay. So just like saying it has helped me in making like your partner or your family, whoever you live with, aware of it so that they don't expect things from you, because I'm not good at like voicing how I feel. So once I get that out of the way, Taylor's not like, let's go do this and this and this. And then I like feel bad and need to do it. He knows like what state I'm in. So then he's like able to like level his expectation of, maybe we're not going to go on a run today. Maybe like I'll bring your breakfast to bed or something like that. Yeah. Becoming aware of it and saying it is probably the biggest thing. For me, I love like breathing techniques.
Yes, that is so helpful.
Breathing and affirmations have been like a really big thing for me. And I think that's something that's really cool because like you can do it no matter what religion you are. And I think something that's simple like that is cool. Like if you do have a relationship with Jesus, you can work that like into, breath work or meditation. Like I feel like we hear those and it's kind of like, well, that's not prayer. So I'm not going to meditate, like there's a way for us to still like put that in. So I love to like meditate. Prayer. It's kind of the same thing, but I love to like have that quiet time where I can just like breathe and like talk to God or like work through my day or try to just like silence my mind. Those would be like my biggest coping things that I try to do like almost every day.
So fam, taking care of your health isn't always easy, but it should at least be simple. That's why for the last several years, I've been drinking AG1 just about every day. It's just 1 scoop mixed in water once a day, every day, and it makes you feel so ready to take on the day. That's because each serving of AG1 delivers my daily dose of vitamins, minerals, pre- and probiotics, and more. It's a powerful, healthy habit that's also powerfully simple. AG1 cares just as much about what's going in my body as I do, and they are absolutely obsessed with the quality. AG1's secret ingredients are specially sourced for nutrient density, absorption, and potency, and every batch goes through rigorous testing. When I drink AG1, I know that all my nutritional bases are covered. I love that AG1 supports my gut, brain, and immune health with its vitamins, probiotics, and nutrients. Plus, every scoop includes folate and magnesium for stress support. Y'all, the struggle is real. I get it. The struggle with stress and anxiety is tough for everyone, but this can help. Waking up and drinking AG1 is the best way to know that you're getting the best nutrition nutrition possible. And even if I'm on the go, AG1 travel packs are there whenever I need them. Super simple to use. AG1 always has my back, even on the busiest days, and the routine of mixing a scoop with some cold water helps me keep me at my best so that I might even have energy and focus to spare. I don't have to worry about mixing and matching different pills and powders. AG1 is there for me whenever I need it. Y'all, AG1 is so simple. It's so great. Truly, I've felt so many health benefits from taking AG1. When I don't take it, I definitely feel the lack of the nutrition that I get whenever I do. It helps me with energy, focus, all around just feel better. I feel like it helps my skin, hair, everything. I mean, it's so many vitamins. What can it not help? So I've partnered with AG1 for so long because they make such high quality products that we genuinely look forward to drinking every day. So if you want to replace your multivitamins and more, start with AG1. Try AG1 and get a free 1-year supply of vitamin D3 plus K2 and 5 free AG1 travel packs with your first subscription at drinkag1.com/whoa. Again, that's drinkag1.com/whoa to check it out today. Breathing is like so important, but it's such a thing that you don't think about because breathing obviously comes naturally, like you're going to be breathing, but intentional breathing changes everything. Like I remember, and I probably told this story last time you were on the podcast just because I'm sure we talked about breathing. I honestly can't remember. It's been a while, but I remember during the Dancing with the Stars days, I was like so stressed and so anxious, and I didn't really realize I was stressed and anxious because a lot of times, like, if it's not necessarily happening in my mind, my body will be carrying it, you know? Like, I was like, oh, this is fun. This is great. But then at the same time, like, the weight of what I was doing was definitely settling in on my body. And I remember the doctor who was on set, he was kind of like chiropractic doctor type person, and he was telling me to relax, and I was telling him I am relaxed, and then he said, your body is not touching the table. And I literally didn't even realize, like, my whole back and, like, my butt, everything was, like, off the table because I was so tense, and I was just trying to lay there with, like, my shoulders and my heels, essentially. And he said, you're literally not even on the table. Like, you need to breathe. And I thought that was so funny, and that I just wasn't really breathing. I was so intense. And he said, he was a believer, and he said, you know, God breathed life into the universe. And he said, so right now, we're going to think about that God literally breathed life into man at the very beginning of the story. And then he said, so right now, I want you to think about every part of your body, and I want you to breathe life into it. He said, we're going to breathe life into your legs. And I did it. And he said, we're going to breathe life into your arms. We're going to breathe life into your shoulders. We're going to breathe life into your mind. And I have circled back to that so many times, like just intense moments, stressful situations, like, okay, I'm going to breathe life into every part of my body right now. And just taking time to, like, with my breath, intentionally think about the different parts of my body that need to just be relaxed. And that's helped me so much. And then, like, another practical thing, I love what you said, just telling your person, like being able to say, hey, this is kind of where I'm at right now. For me, I actually I love to go on walks. It's so good for my mind. And so I'll tell Christian, like, I have so much going on in my brain right now. I just need to walk it out. And I don't even want to, like, talk about it necessarily half the time, because then that might even make me get worked up. I'm just like, I just need to walk and just think it out. And so that's been so helpful. And the last tip that has been helpful for me is I know you guys talked to Dr. Amen, but putting your hands under warm water. That has been like such a easy coping thing that has helped me so much with anxiety. Like Christian will tell me, you need to go put your hands under warm water when he can tell that I'm getting anxious. And like it calms me down every time because like I mentioned, your body sometimes reacts, even sometimes for me, before like my mind catches up with what's happening. And so my body will show the signs of anxiety, like I might be a little shaky or whatever. And he says when your body's reacting, and then it tells your mind, like, it goes into panic mode immediately because it's like something's wrong, something's happening. But if you're able to calm your body, then it'll kind of help you calm your mind. And so Dr. Amen told me to put my hands under warm water, and it is crazy how helpful that has been. So it is cool with like mental illness because it's such a big thing that there are really small things that you can do that have a huge effect on it. So I love that question. This is a really good question too, along the notes of like you've seen family members and friends walk through this, and you yourself have. What are some of the warning signs and symptoms that you can like go back and think, like you even said it, at 8 years old, you thought, what led him to that point? You know, what are some of the warning signs you can look for in friends or even yourself, and some symptoms that you feel like are the beginning stages?
I think something that happens a lot is just like to look for changes in mood, whether it's someone else or yourself. You know, if someone's being distant, if they're feeling closed off, if they, you know, this is one of the signs for like, for if someone's suicidal, if you're questioning if a friend is, you know, another one is like, I don't know why this is the only example I can think of. If they're like giving away their stuff, if they start like gambling a bunch, or which I don't think any of your audience really does that, but that's the only example that's coming to mind right now. But if they're doing like erratic behavior that is not normally themselves, giving things away, just like changes in behavior. For me, I was dissociating pretty bad when I was struggling with my stuff, and I didn't realize that I was until my husband pointed it out. And then once he pointed it out, I was like, oh, like I am doing that. Like I'm actually like really like not like present at all. And I don't think I was like present for probably like 2 years after that.
Wow.
Like it probably took like from like December of 2020, it probably took me like a year and a half, like 2 years to like fully feel like I was like actually like present again. I think those probably would be kind of the symptoms that you can look for in other people, but also yourself, and like, you know, feeling, you know, like no motivation, sleepy. Being sleepy is fine. And also being sleepy can be like if you're sick, or you could have like a vitamin deficiency, or, you know, it can be those other things. So like make sure to get those checked too.
That's so real.
But yeah, that could be like a big thing too. Sometimes I'm like, I don't want to get out of bed, but I'm like, is this like my anxiety talking, or like, did I just like eat processed food for dinner? Because I eat healthy. So when I eat like fast food or something that's processed, I'm like, oof, that was rough. But yeah, just kind of like checking in on yourself and not getting, if you like see one of those symptoms, like if you're listening right now and you're like, oh my gosh, like I've been having those things, like don't panic. Like that doesn't mean you like have all of these things. Like it literally could be as simple, oh, like I'm lactose intolerant and I like had milk in my coffee this morning, and that's why I like am, you know. So don't like,
for sure,
take it and run. Take it and process.
I think that's actually like such good advice, because I think that's the problem with so many things. Like, and again, like Googling stuff, it's like we take things and run with it. It's like Google the symptoms of a headache and all of a sudden you have a brain tumor and you're like, oh my gosh, like you go to like the extreme. And I think so often like we do things like that with mental health. It's like, oh, I had a bad day. Like, does this mean I'm depressed, or I'm a little bit anxious? Does this mean I have anxiety, or do I need to go to the doctor for this, or is this going to be a problem for the rest of my life? And I think like part of being strong mentally is being able to recognize, you know, when, okay, maybe, I am stressed right now, or I am anxious right now, but of course I am, because look at all the things I did today. Or I don't feel great, but of course I don't. I just, had 3 donuts and a Coke and what, you know what I mean? Like, yes, there are some things that are just going to lead to the cause has an effect, you know? And I love how my counselor, she's so awesome. And she always says, like, I'll tell her everything I have going on. And I'm like, I'm really anxious. But she goes, yeah, well, that checks out. Of course you are. Like, of course you feel that way. And then she just kind of helps me get back on track. So it's like, don't stay in that. Don't stay stuck in that. Just get back on track. And I will say, sometimes it's easier than others. I mean, I remember going through a period where I didn't feel good. I was tired for a while. Went to the doctor, checked my vitamins. My vitamin D was like so low that I ended up taking like the 5,000 whatever every day, and then 40,000 once a week just to get me back on track. And after that, I felt so much better. Not to mention like my skin cleared up, my stomach started feeling better. So sometimes it's just like as simple as a vitamin deficiency, or it's just like the effect of the after effect of what your week looked like, or the season of life that you're in. But then there are other times where, like, there was a bigger time in my life where it was actually after I had Honey. This was more of like the postpartum anxiety phase. And I would say like the beginning signs of me heading towards this deeper postpartum anxiety that led me to like full on burnout, don't want to do anything, want to quit everything that I'm doing kind of place. The beginning it was like the normal things that give me excitement in life were like making me so anxious, and I didn't want to do them. Like I did not want to read my Bible. It made me anxious to read. Like I didn't even, like, it made me feel like there's pressure on me. I didn't want to watch sermons. I didn't want to listen to music. I didn't want to I just didn't want to do anything that like would make me feel better or that I typically would enjoy doing. Yeah. And so I think sometimes, and I wanted every event of mine to get canceled. Like I was hoping it would get canceled. I didn't want to show up. I didn't want to go to things and so I think when you look at your life and it's like bigger things where all of a sudden like nothing, you don't really have a desire to do anything. Like you're getting anxious about the smallest things. You kind of want things to be canceled because you just want to be home. Like that might be like the time to check in with, people around you and say, hey, like something might be off, or I'm feeling this depression or this anxiety. That might be the time. Go to a counselor, start to get the help that you need. And if it's lasting for a period of time, because that was like, I had Honey in May, and then I kind of had like a full on, felt like a breakdown come November, so that was about 6 months of just not really opening it up, not really telling anybody what I was feeling, not really discussing it until finally I was sitting down with a friend and I just like let it all out and was like, I just want to quit everything and I don't want anything. I don't want to do any of it. I don't want to read my Bible and I don't want to. And she just was like, hey, you're really just experiencing burnout. And guess what? She said, that doesn't mean it's over. That just means you need to get help. And I think that was like so encouraging to me because in my mind, like if you get to the point of burnout, then like you're done. And like it was so encouraging for her to be like, yeah, that's what you're experiencing, but that doesn't mean it's over. That just means you need to get help so that you can thrive and that you can actually do better. And what my version of getting help was I actually ended up meeting with this life coach, and it's kind of like counselor, but like life coach type person. And he just helped me get my life on track. Like literally looked at all the things I was doing. Like he calls it like the green and the red, like what good things are you putting in, what bad things, like what do you live in the state of, more just like simple little things. And I spent a couple days talking it out and like got so much better. I know that might not be practical for everyone. Maybe it's a counselor setting, maybe it's a doctor, whatever that looks like, but just get the help you need so that you don't stay there, which I think is such a cool theme of like this whole conversation we're having, like just not staying there. And someone actually asked about burnout, which I just kind of hit on.
I was just going to say, is there a question on burnout? Because I have something to say.
Yes,
so
speak to that. I can't even remember. Okay, how do you know if you're experiencing burnout was the question. And so, yeah, I would love to hear your story too. I remember whenever I found out I was pregnant with Honey and Haven and just being so excited and overwhelmed at the same time. Finding out I was pregnant gave me all the crazy feelings, but I'm so thankful that I had Christian and my family there to support me. For women facing unplanned pregnancies, I'm sure that can be a very scary and lonely time. And that's why I want to tell you about Preborn, because Preborn stands in the gap for all of those women. Preborn provides free ultrasounds to mothers with unplanned pregnancies so that they can meet their babies for the first time, which makes them twice as likely to choose life, which is so amazing. Preborn has helped mothers choose life more than 280,000 times, but that's not all they do. They also offer counseling support and love to these mothers for up to 2 years for free, which I think is just so amazing. Preborn receives no government funding, so all of this work has to be done with the help of people like us in the pro-life community, so let's keep it up, friends. Just one ultrasound is $28 or $140 can actually save the lives of up to 5 babies, and 5 lives can truly make a huge impact on the world. So just think about what this money is actually going to. It's actually helping a life be born, and then who knows what that life will create in the world. So I think this ministry is so important. I love how it's helping moms hear the heartbeat of their baby. I remember hearing Honey and Havens for the first time, and it really does just make things sink in, makes you realize that a human is inside of you and the life that they have is on purpose, for a purpose. And so I would definitely want us to all help out with this amazing ministry. Together, you and I can help mothers choose life. Please join us in the fight. All gifts are tax deductible. To donate, dial pound 250 on your cell and say the keyword baby. That's pound 250 and use the keyword baby, or go to preborn.com/Sadie. That's preborn.com/Sadie.
Yeah. So burnout was like something I very, very, very much experienced. And I think I didn't realize, I think I kind of knew I was getting burnt out, but I was like, no, I'm not burnt out. I haven't been like working for long enough to be burnt out.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something I learned very fast. And we recently just had this nurse on the podcast, and she like validated me so much. I like literally started crying, and this is like 4 years later.
Wow.
But burnout doesn't mean you have to like work for 10 years and you get burnt out. Like I got burnt out in 6 months of working COVID because of how insane it was. So if you're feeling burnt out in whatever you do, and I know last time I was on your podcast, I actually had a lot of nurses message me, or girls that were in nursing school. So if you're a nurse, or even if you're not a nurse, but if you're a nurse and you're feeling burnt out, like that feeling, I want you to feel validated in that, because the nursing culture is very like, it can be very competitive, and it can be very like seniority driven. And I remember a lot of the senior nurses like telling me, they're like, oh, I'm the only one left of my new grad class. Like no one could handle it. And like just making it feel like, only real nurses work in hospitals, which is like the dumbest thing ever. If you're a registered nurse, then you're a nurse. No job makes you more or less of a nurse. You did the school, and that was the hardest part. But that was what I was stuck in. And truly, like even now I still struggle with, am I a real nurse? Like, did I do enough? Because I did get burnt out after 6 months. Like, does that mean I'm weak? And talking with Amy, the guest we had on, she was like, no, like that's everyone right now. And even if it wasn't everyone, and that's just what you're dealing with, like that is what that's all that your body can handle. And you gave it your all, and that's, that's good enough. So that's what I was going to say on burnout is I feel like it's such like at least for me, because I'm like, I'm not a quitter. I'm going to do this. I'm going to push through. I'm going to get better and stick it out. But it literally, like for me leaving the hospital, I ended up getting COVID, not from working, which was hysterical. I got it from visiting my husband on set.
Wow.
Which I was like, it's funny. But I ended up getting so sick. I was out of work for 2 months. I was like fully on, like I had to go on disability, like crazy. But I think that was God kind of like giving me a little 1-2 and was like, you need to sit your booty down and like reassess what you got going on. Cause he knew I would be like, okay, I'll go part-time instead of full-time. Like I would have never like backed away from it, because maybe that's like my pride in me that I did not want to let that go. And it literally took me not even being able to like do the laundry at home. I was so dead for like 2 months to like be like, okay, I don't think I can go back. Like, I think this is God telling me, like, he knew I wasn't strong enough to do it in person. So he's giving me this out to be like, okay.
Yeah.
But that was like the point that I had to get to realize it, because I would not let my mind accept the fact that I was burnt out, because it had been like so short a time. I worked for a year, and 6 months of that was COVID. And I was like, that's nothing. Like, what is that? So if anyone's listening, that was a long story, but if anyone's listening and you're feeling burnt out, it's valid, and it's better to catch it if you think you're getting burnt out earlier than later, because I feel like a lot of what I suffered from was because I let my burnout go. I worked for past my point of burnout.
Yes.
And I mean, I remember I got to a point where like, even like this was probably like 6 months after I had officially like left the hospital. We were in New York. It was my first time in New York. And I was like, I think this was like beginning of 2022. I was like super excited because it was my first time there, and my husband was doing press for a movie, and I was like my first time seeing all of this stuff. He's doing talk shows and all this stuff, and we had friends with us, and we were out to dinner one night with our friends, and we're all like sitting there at this really cool place and like living like my dream of like what like I thought was my dream of like New York and wanting to be there with friends, cool restaurant, and we're sitting there and I'm like looking at my friends and they're all talking and laughing and I'm like, I'm laughing, but I actually don't feel anything right now. Like I feel so numb. I don't really know what's going on. And Taylor like looked at me and he was like, what's wrong? And I was like, I don't know. I was like, I don't feel happy. He was like, what do you mean? And he like almost kind of like was offended. He was like, wait, what's wrong? Because he like, this was way before we even like figured out I was struggling with something. And I was like, I don't know. I just like, I feel really numb. And like, that was kind of the first time I like fully got to see and acknowledge, because I wouldn't accept the fact that I was burnt out and that I was so far gone that it was to that point where it took me being in like a cool city, great restaurant with all my friends. It took me like being in a scenario that was like so like 180 from my normal life to be like, okay, there actually is like, I am burnt out and there is like something very, very wrong.
I'm literally so glad you said that, because I will expand more on like my situation, because that was so helpful. And it's just so like what you shared about the nursing situation. Like I actually have a really close friend, one of my best friends, who's a nurse, and she experiences a lot of what you just said. But what's crazy is like I feel like I can relate to that in so many ways, on just the level of like we compare ourselves to like what other people have experienced or how long they work, and we're like, well, we shouldn't be burnt out, or we shouldn't, like we got to rally, we got to go. And that's exactly what I was doing, because I remember so like after I had Honey, what happened was I was in my last, trimester, and I was writing my book, and I was finishing my book, and then I have Honey, but I ended up having to like rewrite half the book. And anyone who's ever written a book like knows it happens. Like your edits get back, and there's like so many things to do. And I was like, well, I have to do it because I'm writing this book. So I like did that literally like right after I had her. Like I was holding her, like figuring out how to be a mom. Also had a really traumatic birthing experience. I'm trying to finish this book. Meanwhile, we had our first like big conference coming up 2 months after that. So like, and then the person who was supposed to be running it on our team told me she's leaving. So then I was in charge of all of that. So then all of a sudden I have like triple the work that I was supposed to have in like the season of becoming a mom. So no maternity leave, like hit the ground running. And I remember just, of course, like, being super anxious and like having all these things, but just feeling I have to just get it done. And then after I finished everything, like the book's out, like the book's coming out, or the book was finished, it was in process, the conference went well, and then that's when like I really started struggling. Well, it was actually in a same scenario where I was in kind of like a dream setting. Like I was on this retreat with all these speakers that I was like really excited about getting to hang out with and talk to, and I remember thinking like, I cannot be burnt out, because like they've done this for 30, 40 years, and I've always wanted to do that. Like I want to be able to do that. I want to go the long haul. Like I want to have the longevity, and there's no way I'm 23, 24 years old and burnt out. And I was embarrassed by that. And I remember like Christian saying, well, you should talk to them about it. Like you should talk to like someone about it. And I'm like, I remember saying to him, what, do you think I'm going to tell Christine Kane that I feel burnt out? Like, she will laugh at me at my face and be like, you're burnt out, like, which she wouldn't. But in my mind, I was like, no way I'm telling someone like Christine Kane.
Yeah.
But, like, I feel burnt out, and, like, help me because I feel anxious reading my Bible. Like, I felt so weak, and I felt like that was so embarrassing. And then I was just trying to push through. So then we get there, and Jenny Allen, who is a speaker and a writer, was there. And I'm sitting on the bench with her. And I just was like, yeah, kind of same thing. Met with like, here I am in Jackson Hole, like this beautiful place with like all these people that I respect and look up to. And like, I'm struggling, and I'm a new mom, and I'm just like, it's my first time leaving Honey. And I was just like, oh my gosh. And it just kind of hit me. And I told Jenny, I was like, have you ever felt anxious reading your Bible? And like, that's how I opened it up. And she was like, yes. And then she started like telling me about like seasons she's been through. And then I like really opened up and she said, Sadie, like, this is what burnout is. And she said, but hey, she said, I've been there 3 times in my life and I'm still doing what I'm doing and I'm thriving and like, but it happens. And she's the one that told me about the life coach. And so I went to the same person. But anyways, it was like just so helpful because it was like one of the people who I would have been like, I'm never going to say it to her because there's no way she's experienced this because she's gone the long haul. And yet she's like, I've experienced this 3 times. And like, you have to stop and you have to like work through that and do what you need to do. And it was so cool because I shifted so many things the next year. Like I took major steps back. I got off social media for like 7 months, like just did what I needed to do. But for when I had Haven, I had a full maternity leave, like just did it just better, like just practically did my life better, got reorganized, reprioritized, and I can confidently say like now I'm busier than maybe I've even ever been, but I don't feel stressed. I don't feel the anxiousness. I don't feel the feeling of burnout. I feel so excited and so passionate about what I'm doing. Now, I'm not naive to think that that can't happen another time in my life. Absolutely. But I'm so like, you know, I'm so ahead of the game now where I'm like, I don't want to get to that place. So I'm not going to fill my life in the things that I know is going to lead me there. But yeah, I think that that's so, you know, you just kind of have to come to reality with what your real reality is. Like, cause sometimes it's like, oh yeah, well, like I'm in New York, I'm having fun. Everyone's laughing. I'm laughing. But if like the reality inside is not matching the reality on the outside, then like you got to come face to face and confront that and get right with what you need to get right. So I'm so glad you shared more about your burnout because that took me back to like, yeah, kind of same. And it's amazing that all the people that go the long haul, they experience it too in different seasons and they had to work it out one time or another as well. And I think one reason why too, I'll say last thing on burnout, that I was afraid about admitting burnout is because I think that a lot of young people do use that term falsely and wrongly. It's like, oh, well, I'm busy, I'm burnt out. And it's not just like when you're busy, you're burnt out. Like I said, I'm probably busier than I've ever been right now and I'm not burnt out. But there are situations that you go through like traumatic times or times where like things are totally off balance or something is just not right. And that is just a more extreme thing than just being busy. So just want to make sure that we define it's not just being busy.
Yeah.
One thing you talked about was feeling numb, and that's actually a question that people had is how do you keep from staying numb? And so you kind of mentioned earlier, like you had these 2 years where you didn't really feel like yourself. How do you get out